Well, after making a small tier list of languages and then making a video about how I learned Spanish at a university, now it's time to rank some of the Spanish classes that I took in this, academic journey, you can say. So, just ranking Spanish classes based on what I learned and, how was the process overall, basically, So just immediately going to the main screen here, I'm going to be ranking classes from a university that I attended, UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, along with 2 high school classes where I basically learned Spanish. So the first 2 here, I'm just going to highlight this. Spanish 1 from high school and Spanish 2 honors from high school. And then the rest are basically classes, courses that I took from a university, 113, 114, 213, and so on and so forth. You can even see, the names of these courses that I took over the span of 4 years. 2 years of grammar and then 2 years of highly advanced Spanish courses that I took before starting, this, I guess you can say, small tier list of courses. I just want to show the degree requirements that it actually took to get the diploma later. As you basically graduate from UNLV, then you get your diploma. So, in this digital document that I have, just my name here, you can see the general education college requirements. There's a whole bunch of electives. You don't really have to pay attention to the second column. What you have to pay attention to is, let me just move the webcam to here. This is what you have to pay attention to, the department requirements, right? This is where all of the Spanish courses that I took, that's basically where they land. You have composition and grammar, literature, culture, linguistics, Spanish for the professions. I'm just going to, quickly explain each Spanish course as I do, this tier. And if we scroll down, there we go. You can see basically all of the Spanish courses that the university offered. You don't take a lot of them, and this is actually something. This is a fun fact about the degree that I took at UNLV. If other, majors, especially ones that are, based on science and math, you have to take like 90% credits of classes and then 30 credits of electives. With world languages, especially Spanish, you take 60-60. So it's basically split because you don't need to take a lot of courses in Spanish, even though the university actually offers a lot of courses. So most of the courses that I took, starting all the way, from the beginner courses to like the highly advanced ones, you can see these courses, Spanish 213 and 214. Again, later I'll explain what they are. Spanish 341, this one, these 4. Aside from Spanish 410, I did not take Spanish 410. Then Introduction to Translation that I took. I'm later going to explain again when I took them, how I took them, what I learned, what I didn't. And then, basically, we'll see the story. Then also, I think two electives we're taking from here. Spanish 350 and Business Spanish, Spanish 365. Then again, two were taken from here. 496 and 450, but I think 496 is listed here. Again, some of these repeat, but the point is you can see the courses that basically this document lists right here. You can see the degree requirements, or the department requirements, composition, grammar, literature, blah 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 blah. All of these courses are listed here. So now when we go to this I guess you can say small tier list of courses, you can just see the numbers of the courses. I tried finding a way to put the subject of each course in photos. That really did not work, so we're just using the numbers instead. I know it looks awkward, very, it just looks weird, but that's what we're working with. So I counted this to a T, 16 Spanish courses over the span of, you can say 4 years in a university and only 2 years in school. 2 classes were taken from school, and then 14 courses were taken in a university, and I just want to, critique them, just give my opinion about how I learned Spanish, what I learned, what I didn't. So, starting with, SI, Spanish 1, and SI 2, or, SII, which is Spanish 2 honors, the difference between an honors class, again, in the American education system. Honors class is basically the same thing as a regular class, only you learn things a lot faster and it gives you more credit. So, for example, I actually have a engineering diploma from high school that is advanced honors, not advanced. If you take regular classes, you get the advanced diploma, but I have advanced honors. But really, it doesn't make a difference across these classes. So, SI Spanish 1, SI 2 is Spanish 2 honors from school, 113, 114, 213, and 214 are all grammar courses. 302 is like a grammar and composition course. I'll get that later. 350 is literature. 365 is business. 312 is phonetics and phonology. 304 is linguistics. 315? Is this 315? Yeah, I think it is. 315 is translation. 341 is intro to literature. 425 is culture. 450 is literature again, and 496 is dialectology. Okay, so these are the courses that I took, and the tiers that we have in this tier that I decided to add was S tier is highly essential. Basically includes classes that basically have no negatives to them. They were taught in the best way possible. I actually learned something from those courses that I later used on in YouTube videos. And there's definitely a lot to learn from classes that are going to go into the S tier. Then we have the A tier, which is like just a good practice. Even though, it doesn't really touch S tier, it just, makes for a very good practice. There's a lot of stuff that you can use. B is for just, basic course, not too bad, but not amazing. Then the C tier would not take again. Not a lot of classes are going to go in this tier because maybe they were taught in a bad way, some information was maybe lost. Again, there's not much to talk about this tier. D, in my opinion, is just, I decided to make it the impractical tier, which, is kind of awkward because most classes were practical across, my language, my Spanish learning journey in school and in university, but some classes were just, nah, bruh. Some classes were, no. And then F tier, I couldn't even, I want to use swear words in this video, but I'm not gonna do it because it's just, profanity. But F tier is just the worst of the worst of the worst. There's just no words to explain these courses that I have in this tier. Okay, let's just start it here with SI, which is Spanish 1. It's a course that I took from 2018 to 2019 when I was a sophomore in high school. We had a teacher that was, I think she was from Costa Rica. Actually, and she did a good job teaching that course, mostly covering grammar concepts. Again, I'm not gonna explain all of the details about every single class, I'm just gonna make it quick. Mostly learning conjugations, vocabulary. We learned things like countries, colors, but again, because we were kids back then, in 2018, the teacher kind of treated us like kids, like she made us memorize, I guess, you can say colors, countries. She also did not teach us vosotros, which is, a dialect that's, or, a pronoun that's used in Spain if you want to go to Spain and learn Spanish, which is why I decided to not use it back in the old Spanish grammar guide. But apparently, vosotros is an essential part of the language, especially vos, if you want to use vos. But okay, in my opinion, it was a very good class. I remember at the end of the class, when I was a sophomore in high school, when I was in 10th grade, basically. We had like a project with like 5 people, 20 minutes of presenting. It was taught in English, obviously, because it's a beginner class. But for the most part, this class had the best grammar, one of the best teachers in high school. So overall, it made for a very good practice. So, there's a lot to take in from that class. Again, the only bad things in that class was the fact that we were kind of learning Spanish, for kids. We learned, this is like the type of Spanish that you were taught in kindergarten, in pre-K. So overall, I'm going to put it in the good practice. This course, although it wasn't taught in the best way possible, still makes for good practice in my opinion. But okay, now we have Spanish 2 honors. This class is going to be a bit tricky to judge because this class is actually incomplete. And what do I mean by that is the fact that I took this class again in high school from 2019 to 2020, but we all know what happened in 2020, COVID-19, lockdowns, shutdowns. I remember this was again March, April, May of 2020. The whole world, is shut down. There's, like everyone's at home, no one's learning. So this class is basically incomplete. I did not even finish this class. I mean, I did pass it. I remember like the last assignment of that class was watch a movie and find 20 cognates. I watched Pulp Fiction and found 20 cognates in that class and I passed it with like a B- or something. Anywho, this class, let me just say this. Although it sounds, good, Spanish 2 honors, you learn more grammar. The teacher in this class was, very, very stubborn. I mean, he was not a bad teacher, but he wasn't a good teacher either. So for the most part, we learned like adjectives, possessives, and like, I think we got to like, if I can remember, the preterite past and like the imperfect past, and then we stopped learning because of, COVID and everything. So a long time has passed since I took this class, but for the most part, the grammar was kind of useful in that class, but at the same time, it was taught in a very, very poor way, in my opinion. The teacher did not do a good job teaching that class at all. I remember more information from Spanish 1 than I do from Spanish 2. So, Spanish 2 honors, it had some good things in between, but overall, the teacher made that class very bad, dude. A lot of people did not want to take that class. Maybe the regular class would have been a different option, but I don't know. COVID, again, completely halted the class. It's an incomplete class, basically. My school did offer, I think it was Spanish 3, and also AP Spanish, Advanced Placement Spanish, that I never ended up taking because I just did not need to take it. So, again, not much to judge with this class. It's an incomplete class. Overall, I would put it in the C tier. Would not take again. I mostly forgot the information that I learned from that class. I remember most information from Spanish 1 I remember, not Spanish 2 honors, so I just would not take it again. So okay, now the high school classes are done. We can move on to the classes that are taken from university, and again, go back to this page. You can just see beginner 1, beginner 2. You can see just the subjects of the courses that I took. Again, I'm going to briefly explain them and then just judge them. Spanish 113, 114, 213, and 214 basically all fall in the same category. All of these classes are grammar classes that I took from 2022 all the way to 2024, right? And actually the grammar guide, the old one that I put on the channel, that grammar guide is basically completely split into the 2 years of grammar that I learned. Okay, so 2 years of grammar. I said this in the previous video, if you want to check it out. 2 years of grammar are condensed into one video that's taken from a book. Okay, I showed this book in the previous video. Again, if you want to watch it, go ahead. But the point being is that these 4 courses, 113, 114, 213, and 214, I took these courses over the span of 2 years, basically in the university, and I condensed all of this information into one video, basically. And you're gonna see, an image on the screen somewhere that shows the separation of all of the topics, basically. So 113, I think like the highest level of grammar that you learn is like negation, maybe the verb to be, and then in 114 you go to like I don't even know, like possessives and descriptive adjectives. And then 213 is like preterite tense, past tense, the verb to know. And then 214 is like the perfect tenses, subjunctive, conditional, all of that stuff. So again, 4 courses, all grammar courses. There's a whole lot of stuff to judge with these classes. But again, you're going to see an image on the screen to see how the information from those courses was split into the video, basically. So 2 years of grammar into one video. I kind of wanna deviate from this criticism that I'm doing here and like talk about the professors that I had. But here's actually, like, I just want to quickly mention this. If we take a look at the courses that I took as electives in the degree requirements back when I was a student at UNLV, you can see that what's in the yellow is basically what I had to. Again, this is a degree sheet from 2022. So again, don't pay attention to the colors. Just pay attention to the courses. So what's in yellow is what I had to take and what I already took, and what's in blue is what I was taking, and then what's in red I had to fulfill, basically. So you can see at the bottom here, Spanish 113, int stands for international. It gives you international credit. And then Spanish 114 is also elective. The reason why these courses were, maybe still are, I don't know, but these courses were viewed as electives and not as requirements. And why is that? Is because most students took these courses and never advanced to the higher ones. They never, went up in these courses because the department was kind of shrinking down, and you did not have a lot of students that were majoring in world languages and cultures. A lot of people take it as a minor, but not as a major. So the department was left with little to no professors, and so master's students and PhD candidates were forced to teach these courses. So these courses are taught by master students. They're not taught by professors, sadly. And so, you basically, if you want to start learning Spanish from scratch, you have to take these courses, but you actually can take a test that will boost you to these courses, and then you basically start advancing in Spanish. So the sad part is that the department at UNLV, as of I think 2025 and 2026, is basically shrinking. Not a lot of students are taking, these courses, so they're not really viewed, that seriously. It's an arts major, not a science major or, engineering major. So, these courses, they were taught, in a very good way, especially the first one, 113, the person that taught it was like a Mexican guy. He was like 25 years old, master student, did a phenomenal job teaching the course. 114 was taught by actually a very bad PhD candidate who, he had bad English and bad Spanish. I don't know how he became a student, but then, 213 and 214 were taught by the same professor, and she was, quite old. She didn't do a good job, but not a bad job either. So overall, again, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on these courses. I'm just gonna put all of them in the good practice, because grammar is definitely an essential part of any language. In my opinion, grammar is something that has to be learned, but then you have to understand how to use the grammar. So basically 2 years of Spanish all going to the good practice. They're not really touching S tier, because future classes, like the ones that you see at the bottom here, they really teach you and really delve deeper into the aspects of the language. But okay, now we're basically entering the new era of Spanish courses. So okay, now we have Spanish 302. Spanish 302 at a university was grammar and composition. If I go back to the chart, you can see here, 3rd year grammar and composition. You have to get a C+ or higher, and then basically you get all of the credits. And the same is true for all other courses in the degree requirements. But anyway, Spanish 302 was literally the first class. Also, I forgot to mention this with other courses. 113 and 114 were taught in English, and then 213 and 214 are taught in Spanish, and then the rest are also taught in Spanish. But anyway, Spanish 302, this class was really the first complicated Spanish class that I took, and I only took it for 1 semester, but it had the best professor ever. I'm telling you, like, because some professors were, sort of repeating themselves in certain Spanish courses. The professor that I had for 302, he's later gonna show up in other courses, but literally he was the best professor ever. He taught everything, to detail. It was like an honor, literally an honor being one of his students, and I wish that he taught all classes that are, listed in this tier. But anyway, the subject of the class, obviously the name says, grammar and composition. This course was basically split into 2 parts. One day you do grammar and one day you read a bunch of literature, right? But the grammar that you learn is not like the grammar that you have, in a 113 or 114. The grammar that you learn in this course, specifically you have conjugations, moods, the subjunctive, you actually start understanding what grammar is. What's a mood? What is conjugation? What is grammatical gender? What is grammatical number? So this course, is the first complicated course. It's also a prerequisite. A prerequisite is a course that you have to pass to unlock the other courses. It's not like you take 113 and then you immediately can go take the upper division electives. No, that's not how this works. So you have to pass this course to unlock the rest of the courses. So, this course, in my opinion, was the best class that I've taken. It had the best professor. You really understood, the elements of grammar in this course, because the professor just did the best job ever to basically explain what is the subjunctive, what is language, what is the subjunctive, what's a mood, what's a tense, what's time, so you fully understand what a language is. And this course actually made me understand the purpose of the subjunctive in Spanish. So again, overall, S tier. It's highly essential, and it stays in that tier because this class was definitely, one of the best, if not the best, Spanish course that I took in my university at UNLV. But okay, now we have Spanish 350, and this class is completely polar opposite of Spanish 302. Okay, Spanish 350, this is a literature course. Here's the thing, language literature classes at UNLV, I don't know about other universities, but the way that it was organized is because literature is such a flexible subject, you can have multiple topics in literature. There was monsters, food, books, movies. There are many topics for literature. This class is, I'm pretty sure it was called Monsters in Hispanic Literature, right? Monsters mean you read a book and then there's some type of spider or monster or vampire, and you have to understand what the monster is and what's the purpose in Spanish literature. And let me tell you, this course, with all due respect, I'm not going to be biased, okay? With all due respect, it had the worst professor ever, bro. I'm telling you, she was from Spain. She used vosotros with us, which I actually don't mind, but she was actually kind of like a bully, literally a bully in the class. She would demoralize students in the course if they did not understand what was happening, and she basically made literature way complicated than it has to be. And I'm already, a person who just doesn't like literature at all. I don't see the purpose and the point of having literature courses when you're learning a language, but this is just me. So this course is just a whole bunch of reading. There's 2 essays, 4 reflections, presentation, final exam, and there's also participation points that you have to get to pass the class. There's also I think one of the essays was you have to take the essay, put it into ChatGPT. ChatGPT grades the essay, and then you have to grade his essay, he grades yours. I completely did not even understand the homework that I got from this course. This class literally broke my Spanish. I actually found myself being dumber in this course than I found myself in the other courses. But still I had to take that class. I took that class as an elective, okay, as an elective, and the professor that I had for this course, she's gonna show up a bit later in the tier list. So again, overall, just this is an F tier. This class is literally an F tier class. There's just no words for this course. Worst professor, worst format, lots of assignments. The Spanish in this class was effing useless. Useless. Just like the teacher, dude. I'm telling you, well, not the teacher, the professor. I'm telling you, this is by far the worst Spanish class, or Spanish course that I took at a university. So, this is just my opinion of the class. But anyway, now, I also forgot to mention this. If we go back to the whole list of classes here that you can see, these classes, of course, I took in 1 year, high school, and then this is one semester, and also one semester. This also was one semester. I think it was fall of 2024. But then these classes were all taken in one semester, so 3, and then 4 were taken in one semester. So I actually had to slow down the content on the channel because I had to focus on these courses. And then the last semester was just only 2 classes. So now we're basically entering, the time where I had to take multiple courses per semester, and my electives were, again, just finished. So okay, now we have Spanish 365, which is Spanish for Business Spanish 1. Same professor that I had for 302, which is already a good sign, because here's the thing about the course. It wasn't really so much about, like, Spanish for business. It was more like Spanish for marketing and like commercial stuff, where you have to do a lot of projects. And the good thing about this course is the fact that, again, taught in Spanish, it has no final exams. There are no essays, there are no presentations, there is nothing. This class has lots of projects. You have to write lots of papers, and it's also, there's a bit of graphic design also in this class. Again, I took it in when was it? Along with 350, I took it in spring of 2025. So same professor for 302. The Spanish, I actually spoke a lot in this course. The Spanish was definitely useful, in this course. So overall, same as the Spanish 302. S tier, highly essential. Definitely, a phenomenal course that I will definitely take again. Lots of good stuff. I learned graphic design also, how to speak Spanish, and how to understand my register of Spanish in this course. So again, not a lot to say, but still one of the best classes that I've taken at UNLV, and I took this class as an elective even, which is interesting. So okay, now we have a Spanish 312, which is Phonetics and Phonology. This is where I began to really understand, the linguistics of the language that I'm learning, obviously, which is Spanish. It was taught by a professor. She was quite old. I think she was from Puerto Rico or something like that, from the Caribbean somewhere. Then she moved to Mexico. Then she moved to the States. She had good Spanish but bad English, which is it's fine. She did a good job teaching this class. She wasn't the best, but she wasn't bad either. So you basically just learn phonetics and phonology. You learn what's a fricative sound, what's labiodental, glottal, plosiva. You just learn the sounds and the phonetics of the language. There are not a lot of projects. There's only one paper and maybe a few reflections, midterm exam and final exam. It wasn't taught in the best way, and it wasn't really formatted very good, but it wasn't a bad class either. So I'm just gonna put it in the B tier. Basic course, definitely would take it again, because again, it teaches you the deep elements of the language, which is not really that useful to use, but really good to know in general. So okay, that's just my take on 312. Now to quickly take a break from the tier that I'm doing in the video, just quickly wanna mention this element that I already spoke about previously in the video. When the department is shrinking, not a lot of students are taking Spanish courses, and therefore there's actually a shortage in professors, in students. So this major is not really offered that much. And some classes, this is actually a very weird phenomenon that happened when I was taking these courses, is the fact that some courses were offered only once a year, not once a semester, once a year. And therefore you had to basically plan out the classes that you were going to take at the university. So I took these courses in spring of 2025, and these were taken in fall of 2025. Again, I had to slow down the content on the channel just to focus on them. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because take a look at the description of these classes. Intro to Linguistics, Intro to Translation, Intro to Medieval Literature. All of these classes are intro. So therefore, I have to take them before I'm taking the advanced courses. Duh, obviously. But I ended up taking these courses first and then these ones. And the reason why is, again, because some courses were offered once a year, not once a semester, once a year. So the order of the classes were mixed. I should have taken these courses in spring of 2025 and then the other ones in fall. So I should have taken these courses in spring and these in fall, but it ended up being switched. I don't know why they did. Well, I know why they did that, because again, some classes are offered only once a year. So, just complete mix up of courses that I took. But anyway, just quickly, just want to, judge them, just give my opinion. Spanish 304 is again Intro to Linguistics. Just to quickly summarize up the class, same professor that I had for 312. The first month of the class is just History of Linguistics. Then you learn Phonetics, which I already learned. Then you learn Morphology and Syntax. You learn, the actual grammar, what is conjugation, what is time, what's a tense, which again, Spanish 302 did, but this class did it even more specifically. And then you learn lexicon, vocabulary, maybe a bit of dialects, and then in the end, you learn the history of Spanish. So overall, it was taught even better than the phonetics class. So I'm just going to put it in the A tier. Good practice. This was definitely a very, very good course that I took at UNLV. Definitely taken again, and would recommend it to many people. Then we have Spanish 315, Intro to Translation. Same professor that I had for 302 and 365. I'm going to be honest here. This is just S tier, bro. Highly essential course, because the information that I learned from that course, I learned, the whole point of a translation. And, this course did not have any projects, just 2 exams, a bit of homework in between. But that's really about it. You actually translate from English to Spanish. So, it's basically just like Spanish 302, one of the best classes that I've ever taken at a university, because I understood the whole point of translation. Translation does not just mean, it's different from interpretation where you have to speak and translate the language. Translation doesn't mean, you just change the words to whatever fits you. Translation actually means that you find a way to communicate the same meaning from that language so that the speaker of a different language perfectly understands it. That's basically the meaning of translation. So, I can translate English to Spanish, but Spanish to English, a bit of difficulties having with that. But again, overall, just one semester. 304 was same semester as 304, 315. Phenomenal class, definitely recommended. That's intro to translation. Okay, now we have Spanish 341, which is Intro to Medieval Literature. Okay, medieval literature in that course was, again, just like 350, which is the monster literature course. This course basically teaches you, Spanish from the medieval times. Like you have, like you read poems like El Poema de Mio Cid, and then you read like Lazarillo de Tormes, then Miguel de Cervantes. So just again, Spanish taken from medieval literature that was, spoken from a long time ago. Even though I'm completely, I'm just against the whole idea of learning the language from literature. I see completely no point of that, no use. Again, this is just my opinion. But the saving grace in that class was the fact that the professor, she was American, she's not Hispanic. All other ones were, Hispanic, that were born in different countries, but she was American and she learned Spanish. She had perfect Spanish, perfect English. I was able to understand her perfectly. And the structure of that course was 20% attendance, 40% midterm, and 40% final, right? So just so you understand the structure of the course, this may sound good on paper, but in reality, it's actually a very, bad form of the class, because if you fail one exam, then you're done. And considering how you have to basically pass all of the classes with a C+, if you fail one exam, you're done. Again, you have no homework, there are no projects, there are no presentations, just exams, and that's it. But this class has a lot, and I mean a lot of reading, okay? A lot of old Spanish reading that's completely impractical in my opinion nowadays. You don't need to, learn this level of Spanish nowadays because it's just not applicable. So again, the best thing about the class is the fact that the professor, she did an absolutely phenomenal job teaching this course, but the negatives of this class is the fact that, again, just completely impractical. Even the structure of the class was, kind of weird with the 40% final and midterm. So overall, I literally want to put it in the F tier because of how just impractical and not applicable this course is. But I'm gonna be elevate it just a little bit and put it in the D tier. Okay, only one course is gonna go here, and that's basically the D tier, impractical, right? The only good thing about the course is the fact that the professor, she did a phenomenal job, and actually I was able to understand what literature is. It's just that the material itself, there's lots of readings. But okay, now 3 final courses, 425, 415, 496. Spanish 425 is Spanish culture. This class was taught by one of the coordinators in the department. He did a very good job teaching this course. He wasn't the best professor, but wasn't a bad professor either. This culture class, again, taken in the same semester, but to quickly summarize it up, this course had like movies, comics, the history of like Spanish in Spain, then Latin America, then Mexico. And then there's also telenovelas. Again, Hispanic people love telenovelas. And he actually made us watch a few, when we were taking this course. He actually gave us some comics. We read them at home, and then we brought them back to the class. So, overall, it's definitely not a bad class. You basically learn about the culture of Spanish I think it was in Mexico, particularly in Mexico. After learning it, from Spain and Latin America and other places. So again, overall, it's a basic course. There's not a lot of good practice from this course because I mostly forgot what I learned. It's just that I learned new information that I have not used, basically. So I'm just gonna put it, in the basic course. B is for basic. Definitely a nice course, that I took. We'll definitely take it again. But yeah, that's really my opinion about 425. Now 450, 496. Again, if we go back to this page, these are the last courses that I took my last semester. 2 courses, food literature and dialectology. 450, taught by the same professor that I had for 350. Same professor, same form of the class. Luckily, there was no, whole ChatGPT essay or whatever the hell she made us do. This class, again, had 2 essays, 4 reflections, 1 presentation, 1 exam. Again, taught in the same exact way as 350, so I'm not going to waste time with this course, F tier all the way. I mean, some stories, again, just like monsters in literature. I mean, here's the thing, just to give you a few examples, there were like, authors such as Julio Cortázar and Borges, and maybe other ones that I'm missing, but these authors lived like a century ago, and we had to read their literature, we had to read their, text and books and analyze overall just the experience of, reading books by these people, both in 350 and 450, just, again, in my opinion, useless, not necessary, dude. I don't need to, learn the language based on how it was spoken in literature, a century ago. I want to learn the Spanish, I want to learn the language now and how it's used nowadays, kind of like, in linguistics. But again, it was taught in the same exact way as Spanish 350, so I'm just going to leave it in the F tier. I'm not going to waste my time with this one. But okay, now the final course before graduation, hallelujah, 496, which is Dialectology. Same professor that I had for 304, Linguistics, and 312, which is the Phonetics, right? This course had a lot of work that you had to do with someone in the course. Like there was like a presentation with 4 people, then like a phonetic transcription and analysis with a friend that I did, not a friend, just a guy that I knew from the culture class. Basically, you do like a analysis, phonetic description, 3 reflections, 1 essay, and maybe one analysis or one synthesis of some sort, and then like I said, presentation with 4 people. Even though I completely did not like the concept of okay, you have to do the homework with someone, you have to share documents and stuff, did not really like this concept, but this class literally taught me a whole bunch of stuff that I wish I learned a lot previously in the language, because again, first I learned the phonetics, then I learned linguistics, then I learned the dialectology. You learn the the sounds, phonetics, then the syntax, and then the lexicon, basically, right? And this is where I began to understand, I thought dialects just the sounds are different, but that's not really why a dialect is. Dialect means it's a variation, spoken variation of a spoken language. And you have differences in sounds. There are differences in terms of how you conjugate. There's bos in the Caribbean, for example, which is a morphological element of the language, and there is also lexicon. You would be surprised to know how many words Spanish has for pork. Okay, the word pork in Spanish can be interpreted in many different ways. So this class gave me a whole bunch of information that I even used on the channel. I made a video on the channel, like a dialect overview, something like that, where information from that course was taken to make that video, basically. So overall, the information was very, very useful. I really liked the information. Same professor, but again, I had for phonetics and linguistics. I just did not love the fact that the homework in that class was, you had to do it with someone. But I'm not going to be biased, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to put it in the S tier. This dialectology course, aside from these courses, is an S tier class. The dialectology course was an absolutely phenomenal class that I took at UNLV, and that basically sums up the tier list of these, of these Spanish courses that I took over the span of, high school and university. So, 2 classes were taken from high school and 14 courses were taken at a university. The University of Nevada, Las Vegas. That's my opinion of these courses. Mostly, the grammar courses, along with culture, linguistics, they're at the top, while literature is all the way at the bottom. I might be slightly biased here, but it's just my opinion. Literature courses are not needed to learn a language. This is just my opinion. That basically summarizes the video. That's my take on the Spanish courses that I took at UNLV. It was a phenomenal journey, but that's how the cookie crumbles, basically. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Peace. See you with another video where I will explain, another personal video where I will explain how I would relearn Spanish if I could start over. So okay, this is probably going to be also the last personal video before Portuguese, because I do want to learn Portuguese. We'll see that again in probably July somewhere. So yeah, thank you for watching. Peace.